Hi everybody, it's Amy Berger here again from 2itnutrition.com. Thanks for coming along for the ride with me for another video on doing keto simply and sanely and without losing your mind or your life savings. Today's topic is a very, very big one in the keto and low carb world, and that's fasting. I have notes as per the usual because again, with such an important topic, I don't really want to forget anything. And just a little note, the light might be a little strange. I normally record in the evenings, but now I'm recording kind of early afternoon and still trying to set up my apartment. I hope to have a more exciting background behind me in future videos, but right now boxes have yet to be unpacked. I don't really have much artwork hanging up on the walls yet, so it's a little plain. Please pardon the background, but then you can just focus on me and the message, which is more important anyway, right? So let's talk about fasting. What fasting is, why people do it, who should do it, who shouldn't do it, what the reasons are, and all that. Before we get into the details, I kind of just want to put things into perspective. And when the low carb diet kind of resurged, I mean, people all throughout history have been doing low carb or ketogenic diets without calling it that or without realizing that's what it was. But even way back in like the time of Hippocrates, they kind of knew that fasting was a therapy for certain things. And in the early 1900s, they realized that you could mimic some of the effects of fasting by doing a very, very low carbohydrate diet. That was actually the only treatment for epilepsy prior to the creation of anti-epilepsy medications. So, the low carb diet and ketogenic diets are not new. It's just new that we call it that. But in all the times that people have been doing these types of diets, especially if we look back to, let's say, 1972, when Dr. Atkins' first book came out, Dr. Atkins' Diet Revolution, there was really no mention of fasting at all. It was just you eat food, you eat until you're satisfied, you don't gorge. Atkins was very adamant about that eating a very low carbohydrate diet was not a license to gorge on foods that were not, to gorge on foods that were low carb. But there was really no mention of deliberately going any amount of time without eating, especially if that means ignoring hunger cues. If you're hungry, no one ever said don't eat. I will say, though, that Dr. Atkins did have what he called the fat fast, which was for people that were having a really, really hard time getting rid of body fat or bringing their blood sugar down, even when they were faithfully, honestly, truly sticking to a low-carb diet and not kind of cheating and not being honest about it. When they were, being faithful to the diet and still really not getting the results that they needed. Atkins did suggest a fat fast, which if I remember right, it was 5 days, maybe it was 3 days, of about 500 calories total per day coming from foods that were almost exclusively fat. So things like macadamia nuts, I think there might have been butter or cream cheese, and there were some very limited recipes that were extremely high in fat, and you ate very, very small amounts, like 5 times a day. But that was it. There was no deliberate emphasis on spending a particular portion of the day without eating, or multiple days or multiple weeks without eating. And for me, I actually am looking to make some changes to my own diet and my own sort of sleep pattern and different things in my life, because to be quite honest with you, I looked better, I felt better, and I had better body composition several years back when I was eating 3 meals a day and even snacking sometimes. I wasn't eating all day, but I was eating a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. And my life and my routine were different back then, so I can't say that's the only reason why, but certainly at that time, I didn't have to do any deliberate fasting to get the results that I wanted to get. So with that in mind, I really want to delve into this by saying that fasting can be very, very helpful for a number of people, but that doesn't mean everybody has to fast. Fasting is not required. Fasting is not essential. It's not a necessary part of a low-carb or ketogenic diet. Plenty of people for a very long time now have done great on this way of eating without any deliberate fasting. Now, of course, I'm sure a lot of you know, many people end up skipping a meal here and there, or skipping 2 meals here and there just because they're not hungry, right? One of the greatest benefits of eating a low carb or ketogenic diet is that because you're not riding the wild blood sugar and insulin roller coaster all day, that those things are kind of even And because your insulin is low, you have fat coming out of your fat tissue to be burned elsewhere. You generally just aren't as hungry. I know this myself. Granted, it's only a personal anecdote, but I know there's several thousand of these anecdotes out there that when I'm good and low carb and I'm feeling well, I don't get snacky all the time. A long time ago, before I was low carb, I thought about food all day. My stomach would like gnaw at me all day. I'd be sitting in class, let's say in high school or college, doodling in the margin of my notebook, making lists of food I could eat if I had access to food at that moment. Like, if I could go to the dining hall right now and get food, what would I get? I mean, that's how bad it was. And now, you can go many, many, many hours without eating and you're not even really hungry. You don't have to fight the hunger pangs. So, with some exceptions that I'll get into a minute, with some exceptions, everybody can fast, not everybody needs to fast. So let's get that straight right off the bat. Everybody's so enamored with fasting now, it's kind of this new kid on the block, so to speak, with the low carb diet, even though, of course, fasting as a tool is not new. I mean, they've been doing this almost since the dawn of mankind, right? Like I said, ancient times, they knew that fasting had therapeutic benefits. But in terms of the new sort of resurgence of the low carb movement, fasting is a new thing. And I don't want anyone out there, especially if you're new to this way of eating, to feel like you're doing something wrong if you're not fasting, or to feel like you have to fast because that is part of this way of eating and it's part of how it works. It's not. So don't feel like you're a failure or like you're screwing up if you don't want to fast or for some reason you can't fast or you just don't like fasting. It's okay to eat food. So let's get to the notes here. Let's see. So what is fasting? People define it differently. To me, fasting means going any length of time without food. But my thinking on it is that fasting implies at least a whole day, like a 24-hour period or more, with no food or with extremely minimal food. I don't consider people that eat 2 meals a day to be fasting, or even 1 meal a day. Some people will call that intermittent fasting. They also call it TRF, time restricted feeding, or TRE, time restricted eating. You'll see those abbreviations in some of the scientific papers on this stuff. And the reason they call it a time restricted eating or feeding period is because there's a lot of different variations on how to do this. Some people, let's say you eat between noon and 8 p.m. So you may have a lunch or a breakfast type meal at noon. You don't eat again till 7 or 8 p.m. You have an 8-hour eating window. So there's 16 hours during the day in which you don't eat, 16 hours in which you're in a fasted state. But considering you ate 2 meals that day, are you really fasting, or are you just eating 2 meals a day? And I really think it's the same thing as 1 meal a day. So to me, that's not fasting. That is time restricted eating or an eating window. I really don't like calling that intermittent fasting. And of course, during a fast, there's different ways to do a fast. There's a lot of things that you can consume during a fast that don't really mess with the metabolic and hormonal things that we're trying to achieve with fasting. So a lot of people will, especially if they're doing a multi-day fast, not for 1 day, but for multiple days, people will incorporate coffee and tea. Some people do bone broth. Some people do very, very small amounts of a spoonful of coconut oil, a pat of butter. Again, something that really is 0 carb and almost, little to 0 protein. So it's just pure fat. It's not really messing with the blood sugar, not messing with the insulin. So you can psychologically feel like you put something in your mouth, which helps you continue with your fast, but you haven't, taken away from any of the benefits you're looking to achieve. So why do people fast? What are those benefits that some people look to achieve? There's two or three main things. The first is obviously people looking to enhance the benefits that they may already be getting from a low carb or ketogenic diet. And it's, for some people, even when, again, they're sticking faithfully to a very low carb way of eating, they're being genuine, they're not cheating and just being dishonest about it. They're really doing everything they're supposed to do, and the weight still isn't budging, the blood sugar still is high, the insulin still is high. And I mean the weight isn't budging when they have a significant amount of weight to lose. If you are 50 or 100 or 200 pounds overweight, and you're on a low carb diet and none of that weight is moving, something is wrong there, right? If you only have 5, 8, 10 pounds to lose, it might be something else other than the amount of carbs in your diet. But anyway, some people who are really, really struggling to get those metabolic results will find that when they fast, or for those people, fasting is really the only way to get the insulin down and to keep it down for an extended period of time, because some of those people are so sensitive to carbs, or so sensitive to any amount of food coming in, that anything will raise the insulin and keep it elevated for an extended period of time. So the other reason that some people fast is longevity, right? The biohackers, and just like macros, the word biohacking or biohackers just nails on a chalkboard to me. Whatever people want to do with their lives and with their bodies and with data and turning themselves into a cyborg, putting apps and watches and meters and things, that's great. But I like food, I like eating, I like life. I don't want to turn it into a math project. So bless the biohackers. I'm not one, I'm never going to be one. But some of these biohacking people get into fasting mainly because there's evidence that suggests, at least in lower order animals, that fasting may increase longevity. These people are very into longevity. They're trying to push the envelope of the human lifespan, trying to live as long as possible. And there is a pretty robust body of evidence for this in, like I said, lower order animals and insects and things like that. We have a lot of evidence in yeast cells, in fruit flies, in mice, and things like that. I think data is lacking so far in humans. We don't have a lot of long-term data as to, or not long-term data itself, as to how much do you have to restrict calories, or how much do you have to fast, and for how long to get exactly what benefit on the back end. How long would you have to fast or be very low calorie over what period of time in order to get you exactly how many more days, weeks, months, or years of lifespan? We don't know. And so I don't think that's a great reason to do it, but hey, whatever reason anyone wants to fast, do it. I'm just sharing with you that that's one reason why people do it. And before I talk about who shouldn't fast, or who I don't recommend fasting for, I almost forgot, another reason that people fast is mental clarity. Some people find that, just being in the state of ketosis, or even just being low carb, helps the brain kind of fire on all cylinders and helps you get rid of the brain fog and get the cobwebs out of your mind. Mainly that probably has to do with ketones getting into the brain, but it could also just have to do with a better overall metabolic profile. But some people do that. Some people definitely notice that when they're fasting, especially an extended fast, they do have more mental clarity. I've personally never noticed that. Now, I've not fasted for more than 3 days. My longest fast was about 3 days. And I certainly did notice that benefit, but I don't normally have brain fog anyway, so it wasn't a huge difference to me. I normally feel very sharp. I have a very good memory, very good recall, so I don't know that anyone who doesn't have a lot of brain fog is going to notice any significant benefit there, but that's another reason why people fast. Now, obviously, there's all those metabolic benefits, like I said, the insulin coming down, the glucose coming down, which for most people will happen just through the diet. You don't have to fast. Some people just feel like they get a little something extra in that realm by fasting. For me, I think one of the reasons I think it's nice to fast, and this doesn't have to be, again, a 12-day fast, a week-long fast, and anything. This applies also to the time-restricted feeding. We've kind of become divorced from true hunger, right? True feelings of hunger. And I think one of the nice things that fasting does is it reacquaints us with feeling hungry. In modern American society, and maybe if you're watching this in Europe or South Africa, some other industrialized nation, we're blessed with an abundant food supply. There's food everywhere. In America, you can go to the shoe store and there's food at the checkout. You go to the electronics store, they're selling candy at the checkout. There's food everywhere. So we don't ever have to go any amount of time without food unless we impose a period of fasting or time-restricted feeding upon ourselves. We could eat 24/7 if we wanted to, very inexpensively. It's not even cost prohibitive to do it, right? But with fasting or time-restricted eating, you give yourself a period during which you feel hunger, but you're not eating. You're going to just ride the wave. You're going to let the hunger happen and you're going to push through it. And one of the doctors I know that does low carb has asked his patients, when you're driving your car and you're watching the gas gauge, when the gas is just a little bit low, like maybe you still got more than three-quarters of a tank three-quarters of a tank left, but it's not totally full, are you going to immediately go to the nearest gas station to top off? Or are you going to wait till it's maybe down to half a tank, down to one quarter? And for, every now and then a patient will answer, oh, I top it up all the time. I mean, as soon as I get in the car, I go to the gas station. Most people say, no, I kind of let it go down a bit. Maybe not until the warning light is on, but you let it get down to half a tank, maybe less before you fill it up. You don't fill the tank up at the first sign that there's a teeny tiny bit of room to put something in. So we can think of the body as the same way. You don't have to put something in your mouth the second the feeling of hunger hits you. You can wait it out a couple of hours, you can wait it out a day or two, but like I said, I think that's a nice thing about fasting is it reacquaints you with true hunger, and it proves to you that you can push through it. You're not actually going to die if you don't eat the second you feel a hunger pang. But with that being said, there are a lot of reasons to not fast, right? Despite all those good things that happen and all the nice things people report, I think, obviously women that are pregnant or breastfeeding should not fast. People that are frail, underweight, or malnourished should not fast, right? If you're already in a nutritional crisis, you probably don't want to make that worse. You don't want to be fasting. Anyone with a history or a current crisis of an eating disorder, I do not recommend fasting for you whatsoever. And to be clear, fasting can be a very helpful therapeutic tool. It doesn't cause eating disorders. Like just going without food for a couple of hours or a couple of days is not going to make you have an eating disorder. But for people that already have, an unbalanced, whatever you want to call it, relationship with food, you should not be restricting food when your body is hungry and when your body is calling out for nourishment. I also think, I wrote a blog post about this that I'll link to in the notes for this post, or for this video. Young women who do lots and lots of intense exercise, please don't fast. My dears, my honeys, my beautiful young ladies out there, don't fast. You need to eat more than you're eating most likely. All these stories of adrenal fatigue or, young women that they lose their periods, their hair starts falling out. That's not because of keto, it's because you're starving yourself. You don't mean to, but it's just that we, and especially young women in modern society, have become so afraid of food. And if you are demanding a lot of yourself physically through exercise, through activity, through stress, through not sleeping enough, you need to eat. When you're breaking down your body with all that exercise, you need to replenish. You have to replace all the things you break down. If you want to build muscle, if you want to hang on to those bones, you need to eat. And I see too many young women that are restricting calories without necessarily meaning to. They've just been led to believe that 1,100 or 1,200 calories is sufficient for a growing woman who's doing a ton of exercise, who's under a lot of stress, and I just disagree. I don't think you'll ever hear about adrenal fatigue in a very obese person who doesn't have a stressful life and doesn't exercise. There's just no reason for those glands to have trouble unless we're putting them in a catastrophic situation and not giving them the biochemical and nutritional support they need, right? Let's see. Who else? I don't recommend, if you're brand new to low carb, I don't recommend fasting. You can fast if you want to, but you don't have to. And I think when you're new to this way of eating, depending on how carb-centric, how carb-heavy your diet was before, this could be a huge shock to your system. It could be a huge shock to your pantry, to your kitchen, to your fridge. The whole world is like, what's going on? I think when you're new, it's better to take a few weeks, maybe even a few months, let your body become what we call fat adapted. Get the glycogen out of your body, get the sugar and starch out of your diet. Get your body accustomed to running on fat and to running on ketones. and then fast. I think it's a lot easier to fast when you're not on that blood sugar roller coaster anymore and your body's not screaming out for food. So you can fast when you're brand new, but I don't think you have to. I do think your transition to this way of eating will be easier if you just eat as much as you want, as often as you want, and just get yourself adjusted first. What else? I'm almost at 20 minutes here, and I want to make these videos short, but this is kind of a big topic, right? I guess I'll just emphasize again, don't feel like you're doing something wrong if you're not fasting. Plenty of people out there don't fast. They eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, so they don't even do time-restricted feeding. They eat 3 meals a day. Sometimes they even snack. And they're lean, they're happy, they feel good, they're mentally sharp. You know, all things are going well. Let's make sure I didn't forget anything, though, here. Yeah, I mean, if you want, someday I can do another video and delve a little more deeply into the science, like that longevity stuff and the blood glucose stuff, you know, because I think that's important. But I just wanted to put this one out there because I get, you know, emails from prospective clients asking me questions about fasting. I'm not fasting right now, and I'm doing this, and they almost feel guilty about it. Like, well, I'm eating low carb, but I'm not fasting. I'm like, okay. You don't have to fast. Who said you have to fast? But again, I have the utmost respect for Megan Ramos and Dr. Jason Fung at the IDM clinic. They're kind of like the new, the biggest, most vocal proponents for fasting right now as a therapeutic tool. But even they have never ever said that everybody has to fast or that everybody should fast. It's one more tool in the arsenal against type 2 diabetes, against obesity, against cardiovascular disease, hypertension, all this stuff. And just like MCT oil or exogenous ketones, all of these sort of new players to the central theme of carbohydrate restriction can help, but they're not essential. But again, I absolutely respect their work. I've seen Megan speak a number of times in person at various conferences, and every time I learn something new, I'm blown away by some of the things that they're witnessing in the IDM clinic, you know, things that we thought were intractable, even on a low carb or ketogenic diet. When people incorporate fasting, they're seeing improvements in things that are still surprising to us. Very, very interesting hormonal changes in older patients that are starting to resemble their younger patients. They've had like reversals of graying hair. They've had women that thought they were long past menopause that are starting to menstruate. I mean, really, really interesting stuff if you look, and I have no reason to disbelieve them. I have no reason to disbelieve their case files. They're starting to publish more in the scientific literature, so I hope we see more about that. So again, fasting, very helpful for many people, not required to be successful on a low-carb diet. If you like these videos, if you find them helpful, please subscribe to the channel. You can also check out my blog at tuitnutrition.com, T-U-I-T nutrition.com. If you have a question that you absolutely have to get an answer to from me, send me an email, tuitnutrition@gmail.com, because I might not see it in the comments. I don't have time to keep up with all the great comments you guys are leaving. And if you have found any of these videos helpful or my blog helpful, I don't have a Patreon account set up. I'm thinking of doing it, but for now, you are more than welcome to send a couple of bucks my way via PayPal. You can send it to my email address, again, tuitnutrition@gmail.com. Buy me a cup of coffee. Send me $1, send me $2. Coffee's the best thing to keep me reading those scientific papers and learning all the stuff I learned that I try to pass on to you. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.